Just 2 years after the nation elected its first African-American president, voters continue to make history, electing a number of minority Republican candidates this year. In New Mexico, Susana Martinez will not only be the state's first female governor, but the first Hispanic governor in U.S. history. South Carolina's Nikki Haley will be the first female governor of her state. Mary Phelan will be the Sooner State's first female governor. Cuban-American Marco Rubio, a rising star, won the race for Florida's Senate seat. In the House, we also saw an impressive number of minorities win seats. Perhaps the most historic elections are those of my next two guests. Tim Scott and Allen West are the first black Republican congressmen elected from their states, South Carolina and Florida, since Reconstruction. They join me now. And gentlemen, first, let me say before I say anything else, congratulations, and we can't wait for both of you to get to Washington.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rich. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much. Colonel, let me start with you. I think all of us around the country feel we already know you through YouTube, where so many of your inspiring speeches went viral. But you had a really tough race down there. They trained a lot of heavy artillery on you. Tell us a little bit about your race and why you won.
Well, I think the most important thing with our race is that we ran on honor, integrity, and character. We stayed focused on the issues that are very prevalent down here in South Florida, being a 13% unemployment rate, a high foreclosure rate, some of the highest in the country. My opponent had nothing to offer as far as a message or ideas or a vision, and all he did was run a character assassination campaign and attack my family. But we stayed above that fray, and we continued on our focus, and we offered viable solutions for the American people so that we can create long-term sustainable economic growth and keep the people here in South Florida as well as the American people secure.
Well, the people in South Florida chose well, as far as I'm concerned. Mr. Scott, let me ask you, because you have truly historic victory down there. Give us a sense of your personal journey, because my understanding is you raised by a single mother in very difficult circumstances. How did you become a conservative, and how did you end up heading to Congress?
I mean, I think it's part of the challenge of coming up in a single-parent household is really learning about individual responsibility. And the key is that as a child, my mother taught me that sometimes love comes at the end of a switch, and sometimes love must be tough. And tough love is a part of the concept that has brought me to where I am. And I think it's part of what we need in America today is we need to have an opportunity to experience tough love. And that really means to limit the role of the government, because when we have more government, we really have less individual empowerment.
Colonel West, let me go back to you, and I got to ask this question just because it's been so much part of our political discourse, unfortunately, over the last 2 years. The charge has been made over and over again that the Tea Party is racist. Its ideas, in some sense, are inherently racist. Yes. What do you think of that charge?
Well, when you read the book Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky, I think it's the 13th rule where it says you pick a target, you freeze it, you polarize it, and you attack it. So I think that the liberal progressives saw the strength of the grassroots movement that we call the Tea Party, which stands for Taxed Enough Already, and they tried to turn against it. And the number one thing that you always try to do to silence an opponent in the United States of America is to call someone a racist. And we see that that did not work whatsoever. And I've spoken about 7 or 8 Tea Party events, and I'm proud to say that those people were out there on the ground for me, and they stood by me, all because we stand on the principles of constitutional government. We believe in limited government, and we also believe in our free market and free enterprise, which are the 3 cornerstone principles of the Tea Party.
Mr. Scott, let me ask you the same question. Obviously, you think these conservative free market ideas are the best way to uplift all people.
Absolutely. A good economy makes all things possible. So the real question is, what makes a good economy? Look at limiting the role of the government in our lives. National health care, it is a jobs killer. The whole concept of extending the Bush tax cuts, it gives us an opportunity to see a legacy created where we are able to pass on business assets from generation to generation. If you don't have it, you don't spend it. These are things that make common sense, and common sense just doesn't seem to be as common anymore.
Colonel West, let me get you, if you don't mind, to talk a little bit about one of your personal heroes, Martin Luther King. My understanding, you grew up in Atlanta,
yes,
in the same neighborhood as Martin Luther King. What lessons from King's message can conservatives draw from?
Well, I think the most important, as Congressman-elect Scott talked about, was the individual responsibility and accountability. That's very important. That was a very key thing that my parents raised me upon. But as I grew up in my elementary school, which was right across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church, you know, the content of character and not the color of skin. And I think that if we can restore that sense of character, which means doing what is right when no one is watching, the American people will be able to lay their heads down at night and not have to worry about what their representatives and what their senators and even what their president is doing in Washington, D.C. They have to be focused on what is truly going to be best for protecting the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of the American people, and not the guarantee of happiness, which is not what government can do. So it is about setting the conditions for the success of the individual and not align themselves with some type of collective mindset and collective ideology, which is, I think, what you see coming out of Washington, D.C. right now.
Yeah, Mr. Scott, very briefly, we have about 15 seconds. That idea is so important. Individual advancement goes right back to the beginning of the Republican Party and Abraham Lincoln.
Absolutely. When you look at the fact that if you look at the greatest minority in our country today, it's the individual. To the extent that we look at our Constitution and we look at the Constitution and say to ourselves that the 10th Amendment was designed to make sure that the states had as much opportunity to advance the cause of the individuals, that gets closer to the fact that the individual has the greatest potential when they're free.
Great. Gentlemen, thanks so much. Congratulations.